Global reactions to the war in Israel have been varied and revealing. The United States, United Kingdom, and European Union have pledged support for Israel and say it has the right to defend itself. Moving closer to the fighting, both Egypt and Turkey are calling for an immediate ceasefire. Meantime, Russian President Vladimir Putin has blamed the violence on failed U.S. policies in the Middle East, while Iran is praising Hamas for Saturday's surprise attack. We're going to bring in Ian Bremmer now. He's the president and founder of the Eurasia Group and G0 Media. Ian, good to see you. Should we be surprised by any of these reactions so far?
Not really. I mean, I'd be stunned if the Russians decided to join on board with the United States and the rest in condemning Hamas. Though it is interesting, of course, Putin has had a reasonably decent relationship with Netanyahu and with the Israelis. And one thing we can say right now, as you know, if that's one of the reasons Israel was not sending military support to Ukraine, now you've got Zelensky saying he's going to go to Israel. The Putin, Netanyahu, and the Russia-Israel relationship at this point is pretty much irrevocably broken.
And you're right. That's exactly why Zelensky is saying he's going to Israel.
That's right. There's no question. I mean, Israel's been challenging for Zelensky, and now it's not.
Okay, so Turkey. Let's talk about Turkey for a second. Where do they factor in here for you?
A NATO ally, of course, going to be ultimately more aligned with the United States on this issue. But let's keep in mind that historically, Erdogan has been supportive of Hamas, and he is taking a pretty assertively neutral position here. He wants to be involved in any negotiations over time that might occur. That's not shocking. He's done some of that, for example, also between Russia and Ukraine. He was one of the two, along with the UN Secretary General, that facilitated the Black Sea grain deal that allowed food and fertilizer to get out. Over time, I suspect Turkey is one of the countries that will be at the table when we eventually get to a point that the Palestinians, not Hamas, but the Palestinian authorities and the Israelis start talking again.
Ian, do you think we're at the point where this conflict is about to get a lot bigger very quickly? Or do you think Israel just sort of continues to ramp up forces very slowly here?
I think it's going to get a lot more violent. It's going to get a lot more bloody. A lot more Palestinians are going to get killed in Gaza. That seems absolutely inevitable at this point. But keep in mind, the fact that the Israelis now have 100,000 troops massed on the Gaza border and they've called up 300,000 does not mean they are about to go in within a couple of days. And the reason I say that is because there are 150 hostages on the ground in Gaza, and the Israelis desperately want them free. Every one of those families is looking to Netanyahu to ensure that they come back safe. You'll remember when Gilad Shalit when the soldier, they got him back, was for like 1,000 Palestinians. I mean, the Israelis take this very, very seriously, and starting a ground offensive before they've made efforts to get those people free is, of course, it really does put those lives at greater danger.
Is the push, the signs of normalization between Saudi Arabia and Israel, which is what a lot of people feel Hamas was reacting to, and obviously Iran's not really happy about, is that all? Do we just say that that's just tabled for weeks, months, or years at this point?
I mean, certainly months, maybe longer. It depends on what happens on the ground. Saudi Arabia's interests in building a relationship with Israel has not changed at the government level. They want the investment, they want the technology, they want to coordinate on national security issues. But they had to get something in return on the Palestinians, at least some window dressing. Well, I mean, look, Hamas just basically blew out the windows. So that is not feasible. Now, I am told, at least as of yesterday, Tony Blinken was still planning a trip to Riyadh, and that was meant to be part of some improved relations between the U.S. and Saudi Arabia, but also linked with this normalization. So it's not like the Saudis are suddenly thrown under the bus by the U.S. That relationship can't happen. One other point, though, Jeff, just in the last couple of hours, we have the Iranian president and Mohammed bin Salman, the Saudi crown prince, with almost a 1-hour conversation where they are collectively putting out, talking points on the need to end the violence. That will be, of course, a concern. for the United States in this context, in the context of the Israeli war in Gaza.
What the heck is going on in that conversation between those two?
Well, I mean, the peace talks were facilitated in part because the United States is seen as playing less of a role in the Middle East. They were facilitated by the Chinese, but frankly, they probably would have happened anywhere. These are two major energy producers, members of OPEC, have more in common in terms of economic outlook than they have in opposition. And the fact that they have been fighting tooth and nail has not been ultimately useful to the political stability or economic development of either country. Now, to be clear, the Saudis don't trust the Iranians at all. But the Saudis don't trust the Israelis at all, and they were still willing to cut a deal. So for me, this was really a kind of a realpolitik move, recognize an evolving Middle East. But the thing that wasn't happening while the Saudis and the Iranians were talking, and while the Israelis and the Saudis were talking, is no one was talking about the Palestinians. No one was talking to the Palestinians. In fact, all they were doing was losing more land as Netanyahu and his right-wing government were driving more settlements in the West Bank. And if you're going to squeeze the Palestinians harder and harder and harder, the one thing you can't do, Jeff, if you're Israel, is take your eye off the ball for border security, for intelligence. And that's precisely what happened in Israel over the last 6 months.
That's exactly what Tom Friedman was talking about in his excellent article today, which I'm sure you saw. Ian, I want to close real quickly here with what might be a dumb question, but what does Iran, given the brutality and barbarism and horror of these attacks, what does Iran gain from publicly praising Hamas?
Look, Iran has virtually no friends internationally. What do they gain from publicly praising Putin? The fact is that this is an organization that Iran has been sort of politically aligned with in the region. They've provided them with weapons over the course of the past years. I mean, no matter whether the Iranians were involved or had no idea, were completely surprised, as U.S. intelligence presently suggests, you would expect the supreme leader and the Iran president to say exactly what they said. Those are table stakes for this relationship. It's sickening, and it's knee-jerk, but it is a reality.
It seems hard to believe they were totally surprised, but we will see and listen to our intelligence sources. Ian, thank you very much.
My pleasure.